Stick or twist continues, guys. Welcome to Locked On Marlins. Stick or twist at third base seems an obvious one. So that being said, we're going to go two positions today. Not talking shortstop because they absolutely have to twist on that one. So we're going to also look at center field. Talk about center field and third base today and the Marlins' future heading into 2024. All on today's show.
You are Locked On Marlins, your daily podcast on the Miami Marlins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings from England and welcome to Locked On Marlins. This is your daily Marlins podcast. I am your host, of course. Almost messed that up already. Not even a minute in. Your host, Peter Pratt. What is my name? Yes, it is Peter Pratt. Follow me, of course, on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Miami Marlins_UK. If you are listening to the pod, of course, hit subscribe, leave a review wherever you get your pods. This is your team every day. And thanks for making Locked On Marlins your first listen of the day. It's Tuesday, the 24th of October. And there is still an NLCS happening. Game 7 in that one. The Phils that looked unbeatable early on. Boy, oh boy, the Phils, they're going to go in a Game 7 with the Snakes. The Snakes are still alive. What is also still alive is the Marlins, Locked On Marlins YouTube channel. Make sure you head on over to there and hit subscribe there. Also, get into the comments as well. You have to get into the comments. That's where it's happening. For those looking for conversation, the Locked On Marlins YouTube comments are where it is at, guys. No doubt about it. Even in October, you're still listening, which is great. I appreciate every single one of you guys. This episode is sponsored by Gametime. You can download the Gametime app. You can create an account, and you can use this code, and this code is Locked On MLB for $20 off your first purchase. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, guys, welcome to Tuesday, the 24th of October, and it's a solo pod. Just me, no UK Go today. He may be back later this week. I feel like there's a lot to talk about. If you listened to yesterday's episode, I'm sure that left you kind of wanting more, like the UK GOAT, Sean Barrett, on fire. But there's just so much happening for the Marlins right now. There's so many storylines and there's so many wrinkles to this now. But we're going to kind of carry on. Hold on a sec here. Let's get the right. We got the wrong graphics. We got the right graphics now. We're going to carry on the conversation, focusing on stick or twist at the positions. Being a solo pod, I'm going to skip shortstop because for me, that one may require two episodes. It's going to be a long conversation. The Marlins have to twist in that spot, or do they have to twist? Well, they have to twist away from Joey Wendell. So we're going to talk about all the options on another episode. For this episode, though, we're going to focus into third base and center field. Feel like they could be relatively short conversations, or are they? We'll talk about that. Plus, we need to talk about this Skip Schumacher block attack. Woke up this morning, as I do, straight onto Twitter. What's been happening? Trying to catch up. No Marlins games to watch, but kind of checking the news more generally. Saw this kind of string of like multiple people like being blocked by Skip Schumacher on Twitter. Feels kind of, I don't know, feels a bit weird. I saw Eli Sussman talking about it in his article today with Fish on First. I don't know what's going on, but it's a bit surprising, to be honest. And it's a little bit kind of concerning in many ways. Like, everything was rosy. Everything's been rosy in Skip Schumacher's world, like all of 2023. Had a great year as Marlins manager. The Marlins had a great season. Naturally, he was hired by Kim. Strong allegiance to Kim Ang. So you do have to kind of wonder and question, like, the timing? Is it connected? Is this connected, the fact that Kim's gone and Skip's starting to kind of block some of Marlins' Twitter? I don't really know. I don't know what the connection is, but I do find it a bit puzzling and a bit interesting. Like, or is just Skip using Twitter more and he's like, oh, that Eli Sussman, he talks a load of guff. which is not true, by the way. Eli definitely doesn't talk any guff. He is one of the best in the biz, in my opinion. But I don't know. I wonder if we get to the bottom of that. Maybe, well, firstly, I have to keep checking and work out on my block because you know me. I've been on the block list for many guys recently. They've regretted it, by the way. As soon as they block, they end up their performance suffers. We saw it Miggy Rowe. Next thing is he's out of there. We saw it Luis Arias. He blocked me. Next thing is he couldn't hit. Unblocked. He was back to a king. So they know the drill. They can't do it. I'm just teasing, by the way, guys. But yeah, I do think, listen, it's a non-story, but it kind of is a story. And you have to kind of, ask the question just more generally around Skip, right? Is, this whole change in front office and direction, how does that impact Skip Schumacher? I haven't really spent a lot of time considering that. He's under contract for 2024. I believe there's a team option for 2025. But, with a new direction coming in, like, it must be unsettling for Skip Schumacher. And he's obviously closely aligned to Kim. They work great as a team, as a unit. Skip spoke really fondly of Kim in his end of season kind of rah-rah call with the guys, calling it out, and everyone was absolutely loving life and, was calling out Kim and the staff and everything they've done because Kim did a stellar job. The team, they needed help and Kim got them help. So I can understand the frustration there from Skip Schumacher, the uncertainty, change and uncertainty, particularly when you think something isn't broke. And I don't think it was broke in many ways from what Kim was doing as GM. That's got to be unsettling. A new guy comes in, who knows what direction they want to take things? Does that align with Skip Schumacher? How interfering are they? How not? How is the working relationship? Like, loads of questions start to kind of spin off that. I'm really intrigued to see. I mean, from a Marlins perspective, they've absolutely nailed the Skip Schumacher hire. Kim Ang nailed this one. Sean Barrett talked about it on yesterday's episode. He alluded to it anyway. I haven't spoken about it in any depth, but, some sort of story coming out around the hiring situation that actually, there was, I think it was like seven voting people and, 5 of them voted for someone else. Only 2 wanted Skip Schumacher, but Kim overruled them and went, no, we're having Skip. And I actually always felt that. I always felt that situation that Skip was Kim's guy. Skip kind of fell in love with Skip like immediately and could see the fit. And it was all about then the internal sales job that Kim Ang had to do to make it happen. And in reality, she got that sales job done. Skip Schumacher was hired. And let's be totally honest, it's one of the greatest hires we've seen. I mean, he's absolutely hit the ground running. The team, 69 wins to 84 did we end up on? I even forget what number we ended up on because there was this win that wasn't a win that was then taken off. Anyway, it was a massive improvement for the Marlins, and Skip Schumacher was obviously a huge, huge part of that. So, yeah, I'm really intrigued to see, is there more to this blockathon than meets the eye? Like, is Skip Schumacher legitimately unsettled now at the Marlins? Is he considering his future? Are the Marlins considering their future with Skip Schumacher? I mean, that would be a wild turn of events to have what I believe to be, I know the Diamondbacks have had a deep postseason run, and so I think that kind of maybe will impact things. But on the regular season perspective, Skip Schumacher was the NL Manager of the Year, in my opinion. I think in many people's opinion. Like I said, that may be slanted now, and you may be biased towards the Diamondbacks for obvious reasons. Like, they're a game away from making the World Series, and thus, frankly, that dude should be the Manager of the Year, to be honest with you. They've overperformed. They've way overperformed the Diamondbacks. But Skip Schumacher had a great year, no doubt about it. So we'll wait and see on that one. I'm really intrigued to see. I mean, there's not been much out from Skip. He hasn't spoken about it. I haven't seen anything regarding Kim's exit. But, naturally, he'll be disappointed at that one. He'll be upset at that situation, the way it's played out. And will be unsettled, I would say, in terms of what this means for him directly. When there's clubs out there that will be courting, I mean, you only have to type in Skip Schumacher and see latest tweets, and there's every fan base around saying, hey, should we check in on the Marlins and see if we can get Skip? I mean, Kim's gone. Could Skip be, could he be available? So he'll be courted, heavily courted. So it's one thing to watch, another thing to watch as we kind of progress into this offseason. Speaking about progressing into the offseason, let's do our first ad. And it's our good friends over at FanDuel. And this is about progressing into the postseason, guys. You're going to get your bets in quick because you're going to run out of time soon. But this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. And guys, October baseball is nearly over. You need to get in real quick. You can make your postseason debut, if you haven't already, with FanDuel, America's number one sportsbook. Join FanDuel today, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Just $5 down, $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. What an offer! Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to create your new account. Then you can get in on the action from the first pitch until the final out. Bet on everything from strikeouts to home runs to who will win the game. If you don't want to wait the whole game to get your dub, predict what will happen in the next at-bat with quick bets. So head on over to FanDuel.com/lockedon right now. Step up to the plate this postseason with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. All right, guys, you're back here with me, Peter Pratt, on Tuesday, the 24th of October. Skip Schumacher has gone on a block attack. Many of Marlins Twitter have been slain. Peter Pratt still is unaffected by this. After this episode, we will wait to see. Is this going to be the tipping point? But the question is this connected to Kim Ang? Is Skip Schumacher unsettled as Marlins manager? Is his position unsettable? Is it untenable? Has he had a bust up with Bruce? I don't know. I hope not. He's an absolute stud of a manager. The Marlins absolutely nailed that one. Let's get into stick or twist, though, guys, and carry that thread on, this topic on. Stick or twist at third base. The Marlins they've twisted a couple of times in the last year. Let's not forget, heading into the year, Jean Segura signed as free agent. Jean Segura asked to play third base, hadn't played third base since, I think, the COVID year. So I think he played like maybe 5 games or something at third base. Asked to, switch over there. Do you remember back in the offseason, the Marlins just kept finding ways to acquire second basemen. They were just on a mission for as many second basemen as possible. Maybe, that was the position of priority. It's like you can basically, once you've been a second baseman, you can flex into any position, on the field. That seems to be the Kim Ang approach. But, when it got Jean Segura, man, oh man, it didn't work out. It didn't work out with Gene, just offensively, it just didn't work. I mean, I just want to talk about Gene very briefly. I mean, he's gone now, and there's no need to labor the point, but what is it with Marlins free agents, guys? It's really frustrating. And as fans of the club, and you've got professional athletes you're working with here, what is it with the Marlins signing free agents and all of a sudden just ballooning? Why did we get Avisail Garcia looking slim in his suit when he signed his deal for 50-odd million? Next thing is, a month later, ballooned. He was fat as hell. And he only addressed that in August of that year. Next thing is, Mean Gene, he rolls in. He could barely fit into his sky blue suit. He's bursting the buttons off it. He's chunked. Next thing is, now he's got topless model poses going on. What's happening? I mean, it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing to those guys, to be honest with you. These are pro athletes, and, their body is their temple. It's their moneymaker. Your body's your moneymaker. And, it's a bad judge of character if you're going to sign these dudes, and next thing is they're going to balloon. You only have to look at Sandy Alcantara. He is the ultimate pro. They're the dudes we need. But totally frustrating. I don't know why I've segued off into Avi. I mean, poor Avisail Garcia has been slandered so much on this pod. It's it's incredible, to be honest with you. But it is frustrating as a fan of a club. They commit to a guy, and the guy doesn't commit back to the club. Lets himself go. Avi did the same. Performance stunk. Jean Segura, I think, did the same. Performance stunk. As much of a nice rah-rah dude as he might be in the clubhouse, performance stunk. And he was out of there. Kim took a gamble on that one. Thought we'll get him in. Contact profile. We like that. We think the arm can play at third base. And frankly, it did. So that wasn't the question. That didn't end up being the question. But, let's not forget the Marlins had moved on from Brian Anderson. Isaac Azut calling it out that Brian Anderson was about to be an MVP over in Milwaukee. Man, oh man, that's another topic as well. I mean, I haven't spoken a lot about Brian Anderson, but the fact that the Brewers basically just kind of left him on the bench for like a month, and then as they made the postseason, they're like 2 days away from the postseason, they end up DFAing Brian Anderson. What a weird situation that was for BA. I mean, he started the year on fire. Isaac Azut was cashing in his chips, and he's, his, 200 to 1 MVP bet. He was cashing that in. He was getting a couple of 2-for-1 margaritas down on South Beach with his winnings on that one. Wasn't to be. But the Marlins transition away from BA. They go into Gene Segura. Then mid-year, they're like, we're in the hunt. We can't carry Gene Segura anymore. Kim Ang finds a way to get Jake Burger. Boy, oh boy. And Jake Burger, and I've said this on this pod many times, the scout, I hadn't seen a bunch of Jake Burger, obviously. But boy, oh boy, he was miles better than I expected in pretty much every aspect. Everything about Jake Burger was better than expected. The character, the personality, the defense at third base, the plate approach, the power. That was as advertised. But I mean, it's so funny, right? With baseball and guys, how they can go to a different environment and it can click, and it can go the opposite way too. They go into an environment and they go the opposite way, and it's not optimal for them. Some would say that's the same for Jake Eder, where he's part of that trade. He goes over to the White Sox farm. Next thing is Eder's got like a 15 ERA or something. He looks absolutely putrid. So everyone's calling that a fat dub for the Marlins. But what does the future hold for Jake Burger? This is the question that I want to talk about today. What does the future hold here for Jake Burger with the Marlins? And is it at third base? That's one of the questions that some people have asked. So I'll ask it as well. And I'll also answer it because, well, there's no one else to ask on this pod right now. So Jake Burger for me is, listen, the Marlins right now have such a limited pool of options at third base, which is why they went and made this move, which is why they signed Gene Segura, actually. The system, it's been clear for years that they had a big problem at third base, and it was only a matter of time until they went and addressed it. And frankly, this is one of the best. This trade will be looked on as one of the best trades the Marlins have ever made, because it was a position of need for a guy with 5 years of control plus that's an above average all-star candidate at third base. And to get him, you send away a upside arm that's recently missed a whole year from injury, was working his way back, and who knows what the future holds. It's a fleece job, one of the biggest fleece jobs. But frankly, I'm not wishing that Jake Eder flame out, not at all. I'd love Jake Eder to be good. I've got nothing against Jake Eder. It doesn't matter. The Marlins didn't need Jake Eder in 23. They needed Jake Burger. And Jake Burger absolutely delivered. Absolutely delivered. The one thing I would say as well about Jake Burger and Josh Bell, the two of them combined, I think this does connect into what Josh Bell thinks about. But as a fan and looking from afar, and I am from a very much afar, the furthest away than, there's maybe one or two that are a touch further away than me, but I'm about as far as you can get away from Miami right now. And when I looked at 2022 and that roster and the way things kind of went a bit sideways, I always remembered looking into the dugout and thinking, there's a massive language clique. There's language cliques heavily formed in the Marlins dugout. You've got the Spanish-speaking dudes, doing their thing, and then you've got like one or two primarily English-speaking dudes. Your Garrett Cooper, your Brian Anderson, Jacob Stallings, John Birdie, and Jazz. And it always felt like the balance just wasn't kind of quite right. I don't know. But you add in Jake Burger, you add in Josh Bell. Next thing is Jazz has kind of gravitated to those guys, which is interesting. You've got Garrett Hampson there in the mix this year. I don't know. It feels like the balance of not just talent, but also their cultural balance seemed to work well. Brian De La Cruz and Jesus Sanchez are tight, of course. But, again, and Joey Wendell as well, just to kind of throw him in there, like they got the balance right with Latin dudes and American dudes. And I feel like it fused together really well. I feel like the year before, it was a touch too much Latin vibe. And for whatever reason, it just didn't quite work culturally. And you end up with like Jazz and Coop kind of feeling a little bit like out of it a bit. I always looked over and it felt like, they were always looking around like, they're leaving me out. I don't know. There was something kind of off. Let me know, guys, if you saw the same. Again, I'm miles away. I'm seeing just the TV and I'm not involved in the presses anymore. But someone was off last year, and this year, when they added in Jake Burger, Josh Bell, the balance definitely helped and came together well. But Jake Burger, what does his future hold? For me, his future is absolutely at third base. A lot of people have spoken about maybe DHing a touch and moving out of that corner infield spot. For me, absolutely no at this stage. Jake Burger demonstrated everything I needed to see defensively to make me feel confident that he should be there at the hot corner for the long term. It's going to be one of the best trades that the franchise has ever made. That's exactly the type of deal you want to make, where you've got an all-star caliber dude that's cost controlled, and you just have to give away one arm, of which is totally unproven at the major league level. So the Marlins will be sticking heavily at third base, in my opinion. Yes, Jake Burger may end up in the DH spot every now and again, but I think that spot's going to be utilized by other guys more frequently. And I'd expect Jake Burger to spend the most amount of time at third base. Birdie will spot him, Hampson will spot him. I think both those guys are on the roster, unless one of them or both are traded, which is probably unlikely. Maybe one of them, but I think Jake Burger a lock. Health, all being well, to be starting, 130 games plus at third base, I'd say, in 2024, and is a big part of this Marlins organization. Let's do the final ads, and then we'll talk about center field, because we need to talk about that as well. And this episode is also brought to you by our good friends over at Gametime. Yes, sir. So, guys, if you are thinking about tickets, you shouldn't have to be stressing when you are buying tickets to your next big event. And that big event could be sports, it could be music, it could be comedy, it could be theater. They have killer last-minute deals, all in prices, reuse from your seat, and their best price guarantee. Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying tickets, which sounds immense. They've got deals on tickets right up to the start of the event, even an hour after it starts. It's the place to find last-minute seats. And you can find exclusive flash deals and sponsor deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. Unbelievable. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code. And this code is LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Okay, guys, final segment here with me, Peter Pratt, on Tuesday, the 24th of October. It's almost November, can you believe? So, Skip Schumacher on a block attack. What does that mean? Is he unsettled? Don't know. What are Marlins going to do at third base? They have twisted multiple times recently, but they have found their guy in Jake Burger. One of the trades of the decade, one of the trades, all-time trades by Kim Ang. It's her parting gift, maybe, to the Marlins organization. Jake Burger for Jake Eder. The final question here, what are the Marlins doing at center field? Are they going to stick or are they going to twist? If they're going to stick, that means that Jazz Chisholm Jr. back out there in center field. If they're going to twist, what does that mean? The Marlins also have Jonathan Davis on the 40-man. He's arbitration eligible. Wait to see if he is tendered or non-tendered, I guess. I think that's an intriguing one with no options. Like, where do they go with Jonathan Davis? Do they see him being part of the roster? And that's the 26-man. That's the first question. Do they see that eventuality? If indeed you've got Jazz, you've got Jesus Sanchez, you've got Brian De La Cruz, that's likely your starting outfield perhaps. Where does Jonathan Davis fit in? Can he make the roster? Do they want to take the $1 million gamble to see, can he make the roster, or do they move on from Jonathan Davis? That, for me, is one decision they have to make. I personally loved the impact that Jonathan Davis made on this roster, both on the field, defensively. It blew me away. I mean, as you guys know, I don't watch really any other baseball apart from Marlins baseball. I know there's postseason games going on. I know like throughout the year, there's loads of like juicy matchups. It doesn't excite me. And thus, what excites me is Marlins baseball, which is kind of weird, right? Because at times it's very not exciting. But anyway, the Marlins haven't really had a quality center fielder for a couple of years. Starling Marte, I must say, was very good in center field. Jonathan Davis, in his brief stint with the Marlins, was better than Marte, to my eyes anyway. Don't know what the stats say. Don't really care. My eyes say to me, Jonathan Davis was as impressive, if not more impressive, than Starling Marte in center field. Real center fielder. So smooth. The smoothest thing I've ever seen. Because we'd seen Jazz learning the position, and you could see the growing pains that Jazz was seeing. With Jonathan Davis, there is zero growing pain. The reads, the jumps, everything was just immense, where he was just stood there waiting for the ball time after time after time. For other guys, and even for Jazz, they were having to like overstretch and overuse their athleticism to get there, which in most cases Jazz was. But the fact is, Jonathan Davis was already just standing there having a Coke and a smile and just would then catch it. So easy, so effortless. So there's so much value there. As a clubhouse guy, the feedback was immense, dude. Everyone loved him. Another American dude. Interesting. Again, culture. Felt like he fitted in well. Was talking about that earlier in the episode. Is there any truth to that? I don't know. Maybe the guys that are close to the team, fish on first guys, etc. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you saw any change, whether it impacted things. I don't know. So, what do the Marlins do with Jonathan Davis? What is the offense? Like, offensively, Jonathan Davis is fine. Like, he's not going to be an above average stick, but he's an above average guy and an above average glove. Is there a spot on the roster for him at $1 million a year? I think there could be. So that's a really interesting one, because you've also got Avisail Garcia the Marlins need to make a decision on. I personally think that the decision has been made on Avi, and this is already the road has already ended for Avi, and in some way he will be moved in this offseason. We'll wait to see. But so coming back to center field, what does that mean for Jazz Chisholm Jr.? And frankly, with Jazz Chisholm, he was absolutely immense in center field, way better than I think anyone expected. He looks like an absolute stud out there. He looks the part. He loves it. He loves it. Well, he looks like he loves it. I wonder if he does. I actually don't know that. Like, I wonder if being in the infield is kind of more what keeps him alive. You know what I mean? Like, kind of mentally in the game a bit more. I'm interested to understand, like, how he feels about that. I can only talk about it from a cricket perspective. Most people listening to this pod have probably never played cricket or even watched it. But let me just put it to you this way. In cricket, there's fielders that will stand relatively near to the batsman, similar to the infield in baseball in some ways. When you're in those positions, i.e. the slips or at cover or at point, the ball is coming at you fast, regularly and fast. And you're always in the game and you're always switched on. There's other fielding positions where you're in the deep and the ball isn't expected to come as often. But when it does, it's likely coming, there's plenty on the line. You need to make your plays, but you're making less of them and the ball is traveling a longer distance. You have a tendency in those positions to switch off more, I would say, whereas you stay in the game mentally a lot more when you are closer to the bat, just naturally. So I've fielded both positions. I personally like being closer to the bat. But sometimes when I'm really hungover, I haven't played cricket for a long time, but I used to be really hungover playing on a Sunday. I can tell you at times I used to love being out in the outfield, in cricket in terms, and not having the ball come at me as often. That is for sure. So with Jazz, I do wonder, like, what's his preference now? When he moved to center field, his preference, in my opinion, was like he wanted to be back in a middle infield spot, playing shortstop. I think this is really intriguing. We talked about Luis Arias in yesterday's episode with Sean. Every option with Luis Arias is on the table right now. He's an absolute stud. The best hitter in the game right now, pure contact hitter, best hitter in the game. I was impressed with his second base defense, to be honest with you. I'm just wondering if the Marlins look to do something slightly different with Luis Arias, and maybe look to try and protect him a touch more, or they need and they look to play him at first base. And potentially maybe Jazz slides back into the infield. But after all that he's been through, after all of the effort he put and all the, the fact that you now have, Jazz Chisholm Jr. that, on the field, he's a 30-30 guy minimum. I think there's more than that. I think there's a 30-40. I think, frankly, there's a 40-40 guy, and the tracker will be, reignited next year. And couple that stick, that 40-40 stick, hitting 250 with Gold Glove center field defense. I mean, that is so valuable for the Marlins. It truly is. So I think after all the effort he's put in, they'd be loath to get him back. But the question with Jazz isn't second base. And this is where we're going to get to later in the week probably, is what's happening at shortstop. They have a massive gap there at shortstop. Do they trust Jazz Chisholm Jr. to slide back to shortstop? You end up pairing Jazz and Luis Arias, or Jazz and Xavier Edwards, and then you cycle around Birdie and Hampson as you need. Do the Marlins stick or twist on that one? My gut feel says to me that Jazz Chisholm Jr. is going to be starting every day pretty much in center field next year. Could he play shortstop? I absolutely believe he could, because I believe Jazz can do anything he wants to if he puts his mind to it. And yes, he was a touch ropey at shortstop at times, a touch ropey at times at second base. He was a touch ropey at center field, but I think honestly Jazz could do anything he puts his mind to. But I must say, he looked mighty smooth in center field as the year went on. So 40-40 Jazz in center field, that sounds like a 9-WAR guy, and it sounds like a guy the Marlins should be and want to be sticking with. Guys, that's been Locked On Marlins for Tuesday, the 24th of October. With me, Peter Pratt. I look forward to seeing you guys tomorrow on Wednesday as we continue stick or twist, looking at the corner outfield spots. Avisel Garcia, by the way, will be a topic of conversation as well, looking at whatever the World Series matchup will be and who will be representing the NL. I look forward to seeing you then, guys. See you then.